The screens flickered to life at exactly 3:47 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Every device on Earth, from smartphones in Mumbai to billboards in Sao Paulo, displayed the same image, a massive alien vessel, its hull etched with symbols that seemed to writhe and shift when observed directly. Marcus Webb sat in the emergency session of the United Nations, his weathered hands folded calmly on the mahogany table. Around him, representatives from every nation stared at the holographic projection hovering above the assembly floor. The alien ambassador, calling itself Sovereign Prime of the Galactic Dominion, spoke through mechanical translation. "Primitive species of Earth," the voice echoed, cold and absolute. "You have 24 hours to submit to sovereignty rule. Resistance is futile. We have conquered 417 civilizations. Your technology is infant stage. Your weapons are toys. Your defiance would be amusing if it were not so tragic." The projection shifted, showing planets reduced to ash, cities crumbling under orbital bombardment, populations herded into containment fields. Evidence of overwhelming power. Proof of inevitable defeat. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, seated in the scientific advisory section, watched the display with clinical detachment. Her fingers moved across a datapad, not taking notes on the alien threat, but checking something else entirely. Ancient protocols. Seal integrity reports. Population density calculations. General Viktor Petrov leaned toward Marcus, his gravelly voice barely a whisper. "The formations are holding." Marcus nodded slightly. "All 7 billion nodes are stable. Even now." On the main screen, Sovereign Prime continued its presentation. "We offer you mercy. Surrender, and you will be integrated into our empire as a labor class. Refuse, and your planet will burn. We await your response with, 'What is your expression?'" "Ah yes," bated breath. The transmission paused, expecting terror. Expecting desperate pleas. Expecting the chaos they had witnessed on 417 other worlds. Instead, Marcus Webb stood slowly. His movements were measured, almost ceremonial. He looked directly into the camera that would transmit his response across space. And he smiled. It was not a smile of happiness or defiance. It was cold, knowing, and deeply sad. Around the chamber, other representatives rose to their feet. They wore the same expression. The same terrible knowledge reflected in their eyes. Dr. Tanaka's datapad chimed softly. She glanced at the readings and felt her chest tighten. "The seals are already weakening," she whispered to the person beside her. "They are reacting to the threat." On Earth's moon, buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface, sensors detected the first tremors in 10,000 years. Ancient machinery, older than human civilization, began cycling through wake-up protocols. Marcus spoke into the silence, his voice carrying to every corner of Earth and beyond. "Sovereign Prime, we appreciate your offer. But we must decline." "You refuse." The alien's voice crackled with disbelief. "You sign your death warrant." Marcus's smile never wavered. "No. We sign yours. You have 24 hours to leave this system. After that, we cannot guarantee your safety." The transmission cut abruptly. In the UN chamber, nobody moved. General Petrov checked his tactical display, watching as the alien fleet positioned itself in standard siege formation above Earth. "They don't know," Yuki said quietly. "They never read the old warnings." "No," Marcus agreed. "They didn't. The question is, when they discover what we really are, will it be enough time for them to escape?" Across the planet, 7 billion humans went about their evening routines with that same cold smile. Parents tucked children into bed. Workers finished shifts. Students studied for exams. All of them connected by invisible threads to something vast and terrible sleeping beneath reality itself. The countdown had begun. Not toward Earth's destruction, but toward something far worse. Humanity had kept the prison sealed for 300 generations. Now, the sovereignty had forced their hand. The jailers were about to let the prisoners speak. And the galaxy would remember why this sector had been marked forbidden in texts written when the universe was young. 12 hours had passed since the ultimatum. Commander Jada Okonkwo floated through the observation deck of the International Space Station, watching the alien fleet through reinforced windows. The massive vessels hung in formation like predators circling wounded prey, their weapons arrays glowing with barely restrained power. But something had changed in those 12 hours. The aliens were moving differently now, erratic, uncertain. Their tight military formation had loosened. Ships drifted slightly out of position, then overcorrected. "They are afraid," whispered Professor Henri Rousseau, the station's resident historian and linguistic expert. He had arrived on the emergency shuttle 6 hours ago, carrying documents so old they existed only in isolated, air-gapped storage facilities. Look at their communication patterns. The frequency has tripled. They're arguing. Jada pulled herself to the console, reading the intercepted transmissions that Earth's quantum arrays had been silently decoding. This one keeps repeating, "Why aren't they running? Why aren't they praying?" And this one. She paused, her dark eyes widening. This one is searching archives for Sector 447 Prohibition Zone. Unri's weathered face went pale. They're finally looking. On the alien flagship, Commander Zixstar of the Sovereignty slammed 3 of his 4 manipulator appendages against the data terminal. "Someone explain this to me." His translator chip rendered his fury into multiple human languages simultaneously. A backwater species, barely space-capable, and they smile at extinction. His intelligence officer, a thin creature with too many joints, trembled as it spoke. "Commander, I have found something. In the old archives. Before the Sovereignty absorbed the predecessor civilizations, there were maps. Ancient maps. So? This system, this yellow star, it appears on every map from every dead civilization we've encountered. Every single one. With the same marking." Zixstar leaned forward, his sensory stalks extending. "What marking?" "Quarantine. Do not approach. Sealed by the architects." The command deck fell silent. The architects were legend, beings so old, so powerful, that they had shaped galaxies before the current civilizations arose. Most species dismissed them as mythology. "Impossible," Zixstar hissed. "The humans are barely past chemical propulsion. They cannot be." "Commander." Another officer interrupted, something unthinkable in Sovereignty protocol. "The planet. Something is happening." The main display showed Earth, blue and serene. But the sensor overlay told a different story. Energy readings were spiking, not from human technology, but from beneath the surface. From the oceans. From the ice caps. From 7 specific points arranged in a perfect geometric pattern across the globe. On Earth, Dr. Imani Osei stood in the Kenyan facility known only as Site 3. The chamber stretched deep into the Earth, its walls covered in symbols that predated writing itself. In the center, suspended in a field of twisted spacetime, hung a seal, a construct of pure mathematical impossibility. And it was cracking. Hairline fractures spread across its surface like crystallized lightning. With each crack, the temperature in the chamber dropped. Not the absence of heat, but the presence of something that existed outside thermodynamics entirely. "Seal integrity at 78%, reported her assistant, a young man named Kofi whose hands shook as he read the instruments. "We've lost more stability in 12 hours than in the last 3 centuries combined." Imani touched the communication panel. "Site 3 to Global Command. The entity is aware. It knows the threat to humanity. It's trying to help us, by waking up." Marcus Webb's voice crackled through, older and more tired than it had been at the UN. "Can you hold it?" "Not if we die, Secretary General. The seals are biometrically locked to human consciousness. 7 billion individual keys. If the Sovereignty kills us all." "The prison opens," Marcus finished. "I know." Back on the space station, Henri had pulled up texts on his portable archive, hands shaking as he scrolled through documents written in languages humanity had discovered carved into meteor fragments. "Jada, you need to see this. It's a warning, written by the architects themselves." She read over his shoulder, her translator implant struggling with the ancient grammar. "In this system dwells the devourer between spaces. It cannot be killed. It cannot be contained by force. Only by the conscious will of thinking beings, arranged in specific patterns across the prison world, can it be held." "The humans," Henri breathed. "We're not the apex species of Earth. We're the lock. Our entire civilization, our population density, our distribution across the continents, it's all part of the seal mechanism." Jada felt ice in her veins. And the Sovereignty just threatened to destroy the lock. On the flagship, Zixstar was reading the same information, translated from fragments his people had been too arrogant to study. His voice modulator failed, producing only a high-pitched keen of terror. "Evacuate. Evacuate now." But it was too late. Across Earth, the 7 seals pulsed in unison. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, something vast and ancient stirred. It had no body, no form that matter could sustain. It was hunger given consciousness, void given purpose. And for the first time in 10 millennia, the devourer tasted the possibility of freedom. The final hour arrived not with fanfare, but with silence. A silence so profound that it seemed to erase sound from the universe itself. Dr. Imani Osei watched the seal in Site 3 splinter like glass struck by an invisible hammer. The mathematical construct that had held for 10,000 years fractured into geometric shards, each piece representing a violation of natural law. Through the cracks, something looked back. Not with eyes. The devourer had nothing so crude as sensory organs. It perceived through absence, through the spaces between atoms, through the gaps in reality where existence forgot to fill itself in. Seal integrity at 42%, Kofi whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of reality beginning to unweave. Imani, I can see. I can see through my own hands. She grabbed his shoulder, keeping him anchored to the present. Focus on your breath. Focus on being real. That's what holds it back, our insistence on existing. Above Earth, the sovereignty fleet had descended into chaos. Zixtar's evacuation order had sent ships scattering in every direction, but their hyperspace drives refused to engage. The Devourer's influence was already spreading, creating dead zones where the laws of physics became negotiable. Captain Dmitry Volkov stood on the bridge of humanity's last line of defense, not a warship, but a consciousness amplifier. The vessel had no weapons, no shields, only 7,000 humans linked through neural interfaces, their combined will focused into a single purpose, keeping the seal intact. All nodes reporting, said his second officer, a woman named Fatima whose grandmother had served the same role during the last crisis 70 years ago. But we're losing people. The Devourer is feeding on fear. Every alien that panics weakens the barrier. Dmitry watched the tactical display as alien vessels began to dissolve. Not exploding, dissolving. Their hulls turned transparent, then translucent, then simply ceased to maintain the pretense of solidity. Crews disappeared into the spaces between moments. Sovereignty flagship is hailing us, Fatima reported. Dmitry nodded. Put them through. Zixtar's image appeared, his form flickering at the edges. Human. What have you done? What is that thing? We didn't do anything, Dmitry replied calmly. You did. We tried to warn you. You never warned us. We did. 300,000 years ago, when the architects sealed it here and asked for volunteers to become the jailers. Humanity said yes. We've been the lock ever since, waiting for someone foolish enough to try to destroy us. Dmitry's expression was sad, not angry. The warning was our existence. Our refusal to leave this planet despite achieving space flight. Our mysterious satisfaction with staying home. Every species that studied us should have asked, why do the humans never leave? Through the station viewports, Earth began to change. The 7 seal sites were glowing now, visible from orbit as points of impossible light. They formed a pattern, the same pattern that appeared in every ancient architect text, the universal lock. At Site 3, Imani felt the temperature drop to absolute zero and then beyond, into temperatures that had no meaning. The Devourer was pressing against the seal, testing each crack, each flaw. It's speaking, Kofi gasped, blood running from his nose. I can hear it in my head. It's saying it's hungry. It's been hungry for so long. Imani activated the global network, her voice transmitted to every seal site simultaneously. All keepers, maximum output. Draw from the global consciousness. 7 billion minds, all at once. Across Earth, people stopped. In Tokyo and Toronto, in Lagos and Lima, in Sydney and Stockholm, 7 billion humans felt the call. They didn't understand it intellectually, but they knew it in their bones, the knowledge passed down through 300,000 years of genetic memory. They thought, simultaneously, we are here. We are real. We exist. And that collective insistence on reality became a weapon. The seals blazed with light, not physical light, but ontological light, the light of things choosing to be real. The cracks began to seal, not healing, but being overwritten by sheer determination. The Devourer screamed. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, a negation of noise that made silence seem loud. It thrashed against the seals, trying to force its way through, but 7 billion human minds pushed back with the simple, stubborn insistence that existence was non-negotiable. In space, Zixtar watched as his fleet continued to dissolve. Only his flagship remained, protected by its proximity to the human amplifier vessel. How do we stop it? You don't, Dmitry said. We do. But it costs us. On Earth, Imani felt it, the price the architects had warned about. To reseal the Devourer after it had been awakened required sacrifice. Not death, but something deeper. Memory. The seal must be strengthened, she said into the network. It requires us to forget. To erase the knowledge of what we guard from human consciousness for another cycle. Marcus Webb's voice came through from the UN bunker, steady despite everything. How many? 1 generation. Everyone alive right now will remember that something terrible sleeps here, but not what it is. Our children will rebuild the knowledge, generation by generation, until the memory is complete again. There was silence on the line. Then, one by one, voices responded. Tokyo confirms. We consent. Moscow confirms. We consent. Nairobi confirms. We consent. City by city, nation by nation, humanity agreed to lose itself to save everything else. Imani closed her eyes and activated the final protocol. The seals pulsed once, twice, 7 times. The devourer's scream became a whimper, then faded into the silence between thoughts. The cracks sealed over, stronger than before, reinforced by the willing sacrifice of an entire generation's memories. When Imani opened her eyes, she knew something terrible slept beneath Earth. She knew humanity's purpose was to keep it sleeping. But the details, the horror, the true nature of what they guarded, it was gone, locked away in genetic memory, waiting to be slowly rediscovered. On the flagship, Zixthar found his ship solidifying again, reality reasserting itself. Around him, the remnants of his fleet began emergency jumps, fleeing the system as fast as their drives could manage. He looked at the human vessel one last time. What are you? Dmitri smiled, that same cold, knowing smile that had started everything. We're the wardens. We're the lock. We're the ones who said yes when the architects asked who would volunteer to live in hell's waiting room for eternity. His smile faded into something ancient and infinitely tired. And we'll be here, smiling that same smile, the next time someone threatens to break us. Zixthar's ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying the truth to every corner of the galaxy. There is a yellow star where death sleeps. The humans keep it sleeping. Never, ever threaten the humans. On Earth, people slowly returned to their lives, carrying a vague sense that something important had happened, something they should remember. Children asked their parents why they seemed sad. Parents couldn't answer, but they held their children closer. In Site 3, Imani looked at Kofi, seeing the same confusion in his eyes that she felt in her heart. Something happened here, she said. Yes, he agreed. Something we need to remember. They didn't know it would take 3 generations to reconstruct the knowledge. They didn't know their grandchildren would stand in this same room, reading the warning signs they were about to write. All they knew was the essential truth: humanity guards something. And humanity always will. That cold, knowing smile would return, someday, when the next threat arrived. It always did.